English with deck. Good morning. All right. How is everyone? Feeling good today? Feeling a bit drowsy today? Well, whichever end of that stick you are at, make sure to uh, perk up an ear and, give a listen. Last night I went to bed at a reasonable time, but I fell victim to the old mobile phone in the evening trap. Ugh. Again, I started just doing some. What was I doing? Oh yes, I had to look something up. I wanted to figure something out, like learn something new. And then that led into one thing, and then that took me down another rabbit hole of some other information. Great phrase there. Um, And then that rabbit hole took me to another rabbit hole, and that rabbit hole, and another one. And then the next thing I knew, it was like midnight. And I was like, oh, okay, well, at least I don't have to be up too early tomorrow. But then I went to the loo. If you haven't heard loo before, by the way, loo is a very British way of saying the toilet. I went to the loo, came back to bed, and I went down another rabbit hole. Ah! In the end, I just was like, I gave up. I was like, right, it's time to pack it in, get to bed, get some sleep, get some shut eye. I got some shut eye finally, maybe like 1 a.m. Well, I only have myself to blame, and definitely this morning ended up, well, everything was back a little bit, delayed. Waking up was delayed, therefore doing the morning jobs was delayed, therefore when I had dropped the kids off at school, the morning jobs which had been delayed were still unfinished, and then did a lesson, and then it's just everything gets pushed back a little bit. So I think today will have to be a very quick lunch on the go kind of thing, just to get everything done and not have to really rush around in the afternoon. But anyway, you know, but something interesting came out today, and that is the new Harry Potter series, which is a remake of the movies which came out, and which was obviously a production of the books which came out many years ago. Now, the author to those books, that series, she has caused a bit of controversy over the years, but we will not go into that. So, um, yeah, that's that. And if you grew up with that series, it does, despite the controversy surrounding the author, it definitely holds a special place in many people's hearts. Obviously, for example, I grew up with those books. I remember them being released. I remember actually purchasing them from a bookstore, and reading them, like cover to cover, pretty much. And then the movies came out, and it's like comfort viewing. And for years, people complained about the fact that the movies didn't do the books justice. Well, there's a hell of a lot of content to put into these movies. So people were always like, "Yeah, a TV series, a TV series." And finally, one got announced, and then as of today, the first look trailer popped up. It was released, and like I watched it. It was good. Not too much to complain about. Actually, I mean, definitely some food for thought after watching it. It's definitely a remake. You get that feel, but they've definitely gone into more detail. That is obvious. Regarding the look, the aesthetic, it seems a bit more 90s esque. I'd say. Definitely some very big similarities to the movies. However, when you think about the commercialism around the movies, in the Harry Potter theme parks, the souvenirs, etc., I can understand why they haven't gone too far away. They haven't deviated too much. I get that. And then, like there was the obvious issue of the cinematography. Some people were complaining about the new series being quite dark, as happens in a lot of modern TV series and movies. They seem to go for quite a dark cinematic look. And that's definitely a stylistic thing of this time. A lot of cinema in previous years, it was more bright, more easy to see. We've all been there, especially with HBO series or similar, where your TV you have to turn up the brightness to um, full capacity to be able to watch certain scenes. Now, there was a few dark scenes which could have been lighter, but anyway, I'm not here to comment on that. No, what we're here to talk about today is remakes. Now, this Harry Potter series is a remake or a re-release, whatever you want to call it, of the original movies. And yeah, it's another adaptation. It's an adaptation of the books. So, whether to call it a remake in itself is fair. There is a bit of debate around that. It's definitely a re-release, not re-release, a reimagination of the original books. As it is a TV series, though, whether it is actual remake is, there is a grey area, in my opinion. Of course, though, the original series was so popular, it's obviously going to be held to comparison. Now, that is understandable. Now, you know what I realised over the past few months, few years, and this is obviously common knowledge, but this moment in history, regarding cinema, regarding TV, we are in remake phase. Everything seems to be a remake of this or that. Everything seems to be an unoriginal idea. And when an original idea pops up, it is really hit with sort of mixed reviews, which is interesting, seeing as people seem to just complain about the amount of remakes happening. Well, let's get down to this. Let's get into the details a little bit. Well, studios want safe success, famous stories people know or which worked before probably will work again. Whether they are just pulling at people's nostalgia, I think that's another thing. And it could also be argued it's a little bit of easy money. It's a cash cow, so to speak. But let's go back a bit and think, throughout history, popular styles have always dominated different periods. Well, there was the 1980s. Action, adventure was very popular. Let's go to the 1990s, where that was all about romance and family films, family comedies, etc., rom-coms. And then if we into the early 2000s, well, fantasy, sci-fi, and that's when really I would say big franchises became really big. Of course, there were bigger ones before, but this is all a quick summarization. And then, of course, from the 2010s until recently, it was superhero, dun dun dun, superhero this, superhero that, dun dun dun. Love it or hate it, the 2010s have been dominated by the superhero genre. And then recently, well, it's been remake, sequel, reboot, remake, number 2, number 3, number 4. Yeah, this is a bit tiring, but let's think why. Why was the 80s dominated by action adventure? Why were the early 2000s fantasy? And why recently is it all about the remakes? Well, it reflects the current society and culture. People want familiar content in uncertain times, Of course, this is generalizing, sorry, but yeah, people want familiar content in these times. And until people don't want that familiar content, these remakes and stuff will keep happening. Um, but one thing that I think is worth appreciating, remakes sometimes they just don't work. Now, whether that is aesthetic design, whether it's a reboot which has just gone off the story completely, and maybe they've just changed the look, changed the idea, well, that is a whole different kettle of fish, but these don't always work. But sometimes it just might work, you know? Sometimes if they change it enough, but keep the right amount of familiarity, it can have a pretty positive effect. And that's what I thought when I looked at this, when I watched this trailer today. I thought, wow, it does feel a bit too familiar. But also, there's definitely a lot which will be in it which wasn't there before. And, I think going in thinking, this is a remake, it's going to be crap. This is a remake, it's going to be. That's just not helping anyone. I think going into these things, thinking, okay, it's a remake, but let's go in with an open mind, you might be surprised. Might be. Sometimes it is deservedly not surprised. And this goes for, pretty much any situation. Even if we don't want to go somewhere, don't want to do something, let's go with an open mind, and we might find ourselves pleasantly surprised with the outcome. And that includes learning a language. Take that opportunity to go to that boring park, which you've been to before. You might have a conversation with someone. Take that opportunity to go to the beach. You might just see something new. Take the opportunity to go to that coffee talk. Go to that meetup with your friends. Even if you don't really want to, you might be surprised. You might meet someone new. You might find something new. Who knows? But for now, that's all we have time for. So enjoy your morning, make the most of your afternoon, and take a lot of rest this evening. Okay, bye for now. See you in the next one.